Hello there, welcome back to Life in Surround, the only YouTube channel that I know of that focuses exclusively on music releases in surround, be that 4.0 quad, 5.0, 5.1, 7.1, 7.2, 9.1, 11.1, RO3D, Atmos, DTSX, files, downloadable or Blu-ray, DVDs of various kinds, SACD, Super Audio CD, DTS CD, Dolby CD, whatever. If people are out there and they're interested in it, or I'm liable to review it. So let's move on with today's album. This is kind of an exciting one. We have Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. Here's that embossed logo of the band. And I'm not going to do a very thorough review of the music or even of the items in the set, but I'll show you that a bunch of trinkets come inside this sort of cardboard case file, so that's pretty neat. A couple of posters, some replica tickets, replica flyers for their early shows, 8x10s of the entire band. So if you're a huge fan of the band, this is very cool. Then you have this embossed slipcase for the entire set. And then the meat and potatoes is this book. So some people call these book sets instead of box sets, but it also came in a box, right? So it's a boxed book set, and you get a lot of history of the band. You get a lot of photos of their early live gigs. You know, their press shoots. It's very well done. It's very well printed. It all looks super excellent. The reason that I wanted this set is contained back here on its own little page. It tucks in. There's the Blu-ray right there. Now, one commentary just for me as a surround disc collector and obsessor is I appreciate it when discs are released as standalone, not in a box, but when they're in a box, I at least appreciate it when they're given their own sleeve. That way you can display the disc, you can set it around without having to always return it to the box or the book. But anyway, here's the Blu-ray. There's the Blu-ray. Maybe if I get it in front of my face, it'll focus on the disc instead of on me. There we go. Anyway, so we're going to talk about this Blu-ray today. As I have tried to communicate in some earlier videos, it's not the intention of this channel to really give you a musical rundown of the album. I figure that Appetite for Destruction has been reviewed 2 million times on YouTube and in print. And if you're interested in this video, you either are obsessed with surround or you already are familiar with Appetite for Destruction. If you're not familiar with Appetite for Destruction, I recommend YouTubing it, find it on Pandora, Spotify, a used CD store. Just go blind man's bluff and pick up the set. But this is an extremely popular album, extremely well known, so I just don't want to retread going into the songs all that much. What I can tell you is that I was like a preteen when this album came out, and I definitely enjoyed it musically. These guys are on point. They're very heavy rock band. A lot of the messages of their songs represent something that my family would find objectionable, and therefore, you know, it represents rebellion. And my family's probably pretty typical for a large part of this band's market. So anyway, when it came out, you know, the music was definitely hard-hitting, fun and exciting, rebellious and forbidden, and therefore, you know, highly desirable. Over the years, the themes of this album haven't really had a lot of staying power for me. They dropped the one song from the Lies EP, because on this in this set you actually get Appetite for Destruction, you get a bunch of outtakes, B-sides, you get some live stuff, and you get nearly the entire Lies EP, which came out right after Appetite for Destruction. The one exclusion is the song One in a Million. So you get the entire Appetite for Destruction album, plus some added goodies. You get the entire Lies EP, except for this one song, One in a Million. And I think if I were to guess, I would say it's because that song is quite racist and bigoted, and I think they probably chose to not want to perpetuate that part of their legacy. Now, the other major aspect of this album, in a negative way for me, just thematically, is that the album is sexist. So some people are able to just enjoy that for what it is, and I don't get my panties in too much of a twist over it, but it certainly is not like my preferred kind of theme to especially introduce my young son to. So to me that just like takes this album down a notch. I know that it's part of their bad boy image, and it's part of what actually makes this an iconic rock and roll release. And rock and roll, the point of it is not to be super classy or whatever. So just want to point that out for those who may be simply interested in the surround hobby. I would say out of like my entire surround collection, this is among a handful of albums that contains themes that I'm not always comfortable with. So I probably will not be holding on to this box set. I wanted to acquire it to be able to just enjoy it a couple times, relive my preteens, give it a review for everyone, and then I'll probably send it on to a different home. Just because there's other stuff that I want to play around my household. I always want my wife and my son to be able to be involved, and I don't really want to, be multifaceted like that. So anyway, about the mix. So the liner notes tell us that most of these songs are mixed by Elliot Scheiner, who I often refer to as the godfather of surround. He's just a master. Most of what he puts his hand to is just very brilliantly done. A certain number of the songs, mostly the bonus songs, were done by Frank Filippetti. So the liner notes say that Elliot Scheiner did the main album and the main album plus Patience in September 2017. So the really good news for me is that Elliot Scheiner did a surround mix that recently. It's been speculated that he's in retirement, and so anytime I see something with Elliot Scheiner's name on it, whether he did it a long time ago and it just came out of the vault, or whether he just did it recently, it's very exciting for me. So Elliot, if you ever see this video or other videos that I mention you in, please know that I'm a huge fan. You're a hero of mine, and I really appreciate the work that you've done over the years, including on this album. The standout tracks, just because they're awesome, because they were the hits, and because the mixes were done extremely well, are going to be Welcome to the Jungle, Mr. Brownstone, Paradise City, Sweet Child of Mine. Am I forgetting any super awesome ones? Yeah, Jungle, Brownstone, Paradise City, Sweet Child, and I've always really loved Rocket Queen too. It has like this super bad attitude for most of it, but then ends up with this just very sweet, sentimental tag. The album closes showing that, I guess even someone who's, living hard and kind of using people can have a soft side, can have a very human alter ego, I guess. So those are the big five for me. They all have extraordinarily good mixes. You get the main band, drums, heavy guitars, bass, and lead vocal mainly up front. You get a lot of supportive elements in the surrounds, which I love. It's just an awesome way to mix most music, especially rock music. You get backup singing, you get percussive elements like shakers, tambourines. You get keyboards like the big synthesizer part at the beginning of Paradise City. You get that coming in to over your left shoulder, if I recall correctly. So you have some important stuff going on in the surrounds. You also have big snare, reverb washes, things that just make this album sound huge. So very, very, very well mixed. I have to point out two exceptions. And I'm not really sure what went on with these tracks, but I've analyzed them in a number of different ways. And the sad fact of the matter is that My Michelle and Think About You are sorely lacking in kick drum. I just analyzed in Audacity earlier today a comparison of Paradise City with My Michelle, and upon my first run through in 5.1 and DTS HD Master, hearing all of the songs up to Paradise City, so the first half of the album, and then hearing Michelle come on, and there's that promising synth growl, that very ominous, foreboding intro, and then the band comes in, and there's no kick drum. It makes the track just sound 100% sterile, mid-rangey, just grating, with a almost utter lack of low bass. So I knew something was wrong right away. I did a lot of confirmation to make sure it wasn't my setup. I ran a number of tests with my system. For instance, I have the ability to phase shift my subwoofers, so I tried that first, no change. Then I queued up Michelle and Think About You again, and I boosted my subs, starting with 1 dB, and I went all the way up to boosting them 10 dB. And then finally those two tracks sounded pretty normal. Like all of a sudden there was that low thump in again. Now, I'm not sure that that was actually the kick drum supplying that low end, but it evened out the songs and made them sound mostly consistent with the rest of the album. What I was hearing, though, with my subs boosted by 10 dB is that the bass thump felt a little undefined. And what I found out in looking in Audacity is that with My Michelle, and so I have to assume the same thing happened with Think About You, that the kick drum is mixed an average of around 3 dB lower than the snare. And so on Paradise City, the kick drum and the snare, at least in the front channels, are both maximized up to 0. The track isn't brick-walled, but it definitely is hard limited. And on most beats, you have the kick and the snare really just pushed to the maximum amount of volume possible. And that's true of both fronts, the center, and the LFE channel. So across 4 channels, you have this very consistent snare and kick volume matching. Then on My Michelle, in all 4 of those channels, again, the 2 fronts, the center, and the LFE, you have the kick mixed at least 3 dB lower than the snare. So when you multiply that across 4 channels, you can see how there'd be, at least a 10 dB mismatch there. But the thing that's interesting to me is that in the LFE, there's almost no kick, but you do get this tremendous thump on the bass guitar, and it's mostly on beat, and I think it would mostly be where there would be kicks anyway. And so what my theory is, and I'm happy to be challenged on this. This is just a guy having a conversation with you. So if you ever have different information than me, I am all about correction. I'm a seeker of the truth. I just want the truth. So if you help me get there, that's fantastic. But what I think is happening when you boost your subs on Michelle and Think About You, you're actually boosting that bass guitar attack. So way to go, Duff. Thanks for being so on point, because that bass guitar thump is so consistent that it may as well be the kick in those two songs. So anyway, I did want to point that out. The rest of the songs are mixed as one would like and expect. So after My Michelle and Think About You, Sweet Child of Mine kicks in full bore. It's got great kick, it's got great bass. And then You're Crazy, Anything Goes, Rocket Queen. The album finishes out just fine. So for some reason, the faders on that kick drum got pulled down for My Michelle and Think About You and not nudged up in time. So that's just bizarre. But I'm here to report the facts. I want people to go into surround releases, and especially expensive box sets like this, armed with the truth. So let's get to a rating. If you take Welcome to the Jungle, Mr. Brownstone, Paradise City, and Sweet Child of Mine, plus let's throw in Patience, because that's a pretty awesome track, and it's also mixed by Elliot Scheiner. Those sonically sound fantastic. You have a ton of discrete information in your surrounds. The mix is active where it needs to be. Welcome to the Jungle has that delayed guitar attack thing, the sirens, the whistling, the oh my god, you know, from Axl. So I mean, this album is discreet when it needs to be. You have lead guitars in the surrounds to get them away from the rhythm guitars sometimes. So sonically, this sounds mega awesome. I did compare it to the stereo that is supplied on the Blu-ray and the 5.1. Both DTS and Dolby True HD sound far superior. So you're never ever going to hear those 5 songs like any better. And the mix is on point. There's just nothing wrong with the mix. Content-wise, this is an adored album by absolutely millions of people around the world. I've cooled off on it a little bit over the years, even though like I do appreciate, you know, the rebellious side of things. It's just probably not something that I want to be in heavy rotation because of my station in life right now. I'm a daddy of an 18-month-old. I would say that sonically it's way up there. There's obviously better sounding music out there just because rock isn't necessarily supposed to be pretty and entirely pleasant. There's got to be an edge to it. So I would say sonically this is probably somewhere in the 8 or 9 out of 10 range. It was done very well for what it is. Mix-wise, for those 5 key songs, I would say that it's pretty much been knocked out of the park. Maybe a few elements could have been a bit more discreet, because one thing I did notice in analyzing the channels of even Paradise City, which sounds awesome, is that a lot of parts are present in 4 or more of the channels. And so I know that some surround enthusiasts out there are a fan of stuff being more pegged to the corners and some stuff in the center. So don't get me wrong, there's plenty of discrete information in this mix, but it is a bit of a room filler, and so there are some elements that perhaps could have been hard panned a bit more. So mix-wise, I would also put it somewhere in the 8 or 9 out of 10 range. And then for content, I've cooled on that a bit, but I mean, for rebellious bad boy hard rock, this set a lot of trends. Guns N' Roses spawned a lot of clones over the years. It was huge when it came out. Like, you were nobody if like you hadn't, you know, heard a copy of this LP or cassette. So it obviously, you know, the content is effective. I've just cooled on it a little bit. So personally, I'd put it probably somewhere in the 5 or 6 out of 10 range for content. And I know that just trying to be a bit more objective, like this is a solid 8 to 10 for a lot of people. So my overall rating for this surround release, and I don't do overall ratings for the entire package. I mean, you've got 4 CDs plus a Blu-ray and a book that you can look through of all kinds of history and memorabilia. I think you can get this set somewhere in the $100 range. So that all seems pretty reasonable. Even if you just divide the discs by 5, that's like 20 bucks. So it's not bad. So if I were just to rate those 5 songs, for me, I would say this package is, I'd go ahead and give this a 8 out of 10, okay? So I'm going to go do that on Quadraphonic Quad. I'm going to go give this an 8 out of 10. I do want to warn people, though, about My Michelle and Think About You. In my opinion, My Michelle, especially when the band comes in, is just an absolutely important part of this album. It's memorable. Man, Michelle is a monster riff, and just the lack of the low bass coming in with the band is just pretty shocking. So what I recommend is that when you're rolling through this Blu-ray, pause Michelle, crank up your sub, play through Think About You, pause before you hit the next song, which is Sweet Child of Mine, which you're not going to blow your sub out if you forget by a second or two, because Sweet Child of Mine is all electric guitar at the beginning, but then crank that sub back down. And you're going to get a pretty consistent experience. It actually works pretty well. So there is redemption there. You can roll through all 12 songs plus the bonuses without any severe lack of bass if you employ that little trick. So anyway, this has been a review of the Appetite for Destruction Deluxe Box. If you are a fan of this album, I think you should pick up this set. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, and in my opinion, anything that I rate above a 5. So if we're in the 6 to 10 range, I'm telling you there is value there, and it would be recommended if you have any fascination with the content to go check it out. If I'm rating something in the 1 to 5 range, probably going to be recommending that you avoid the particular release. So I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, leave some comments, share this video. If you have the little bell down there, go ahead and click that, because then you'll get pop-ups and all kinds of annoying notifications about whenever I do something new. If you didn't like this review, go ahead and give me a thumbs down, and feel free to leave some criticism if you feel like taking the time. My goal is to improve this channel, to give really good reviews of exclusively surround content, and to just enlighten more people that this hobby's out there, that maybe their favorite album is in surround and they just didn't know. And so you help me get this information out to more people, and I'll be pleased as punch. Anything that you do to interact with this channel helps with YouTube's algorithm as to whether this video is important or not. Please help out how you can. And until next time, I just want to encourage you to live life in surround.